Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Ekadashi Mahotsava ki jai. Go Premananda. Hari Hari Bol. So today we will, as every Ekadashi, we will just continue reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta. Before we will start, I will just chant Mangala Charana. Omagyanti Mirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmirita Myena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Nadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sahadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namahom Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvisha Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadhadar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the chapter is entitled New Delhi, Crying Alone in the Wilderness. So, Abai promised that as soon as he had done some groundwork, he, along with men and equipment, could start for foreign countries to propagate this missionary work. But he admitted also that he was externally in dire straits. Kindly do arrange for the above immediately and give me a proper place to live. I must remove from this temporary quarter by Monday next latest. So here Prabhupada's he was instructed by his spiritual master, just on his first meeting, to spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And we can see how Prabhupada was struggling. That he, at that time when he was instructed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to spread this Krishna consciousness to the Western countries, actually he was in his early 20s. And he was a householder, he already one child. And we can see that in the further pages of Lilamrita, that it took for Prabhupada 40 years or more actually to fulfill the desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Prabhupada used to say that although it took for him so long actually to spread this knowledge to the Western countries, but it's apparently, his guru gave him an instruction and so many years he didn't fulfill it. But actually he said that always he was carrying this instruction in his heart, that he never lost, always this instruction was in his mind. And we can see that Prabhupada, although he didn't go immediately to the Western countries, he could not. He was not in position. He had his own duties actually to perform as a householder, as a husband, as a father. But then he was all the time in preaching mood. He was all the time preaching. He was all the time remembering Krishna. He was never in forgetfulness about Krishna. And now Prabhupada, he is in Delhi, and he will start his own magazine, which was very difficult in those times actually in Delhi to get the paper, to get the printer, and so on. When Prabhupada still was struggling, so the directors of the Birla Mandir did not take Abai up on his offer, but he thought of another way of engaging them. he would hold a public meeting at the Birla Mandir to help generate interest in the League of Devotees. He approached Sri R.N. Agarwal, president of the Delhi Municipal Committee, who, after hearing the names of several respectable people who would be attending, agreed to preside over the meeting. Abai set the date for December 22nd and printed 500 announcements and 200 invitation cards. Striking a cosmopolitan note, he stated in his announcement, by the grace of the Almighty, Delhi is becoming the center of cultural association of the world. The leaders of both Russia and India had recently pointed to the need for cultural contact between all nations. But the highest culture, Abai suggested, was scientific spiritual knowledge. Therefore, the best cultural resources in the world existed in India. And these resources, Abai stressed, should not be left to the unorganized sadhus and sannyasis, but should be taken up by important members of the society and organized way, in an organized way. The December 22nd, Hindustan Times listed the meeting of the League of Devotees in the Today's Engagements column, along with announcements for meeting of the Rotary Club, the Tagore Society, the Indian Council of World Affairs, Bharat Scouts, and the Indian Pharmaceutical Congress. The League's meeting began with a kirtan led by Professor H. Chand, and then A.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary of the League of Devotees, explained his movement's objectives. Then Narayan Das spoke and afterwards read a number of proposed resolutions from the founder secretary, attesting that the persons present supported the League of Devotees and that they recommended that the central government of India also support it as a movement for world peace based on Gandhian principles. After adoption of the resolutions, the meeting closed with another kirtan and prasadam. Abai was convinced that if his well-wishers and fellow humanitarians would support him on a ground scale, he would create a movement for world peace based on the principles of devotional service to Lord Krishna. But his role was simply to present Krishna consciousness to whomever he could. The results were up to Krishna. Abai was aware that the good intentions of most of the participants in his Birla Mandir meeting would not go past that one meeting. But he wasn't discouraged. Through all his tireless evangelism, he maintained a philosophic jollity. In one sense, he was already fully satisfied. He was happy to be working on behalf of his spiritual master. So it was not, especially in those times in India, it was not actually easy to spread a spiritual movement. So Prabhupada started actually this League of Devotees in Jhansi, but in the further pages of Lilamrta, we will see that it was not successful. It was very difficult actually for people in India at the time to accept this Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada was frustrated. He was so much frustrated. And then we can see that that people in India at the time, they were more and more inclined into science. You know, that's into scientific knowledge. You know, like even we can see that like in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is so many descriptions like of the universe and so on. Recently I've heard some class by Gokulchanda Prabhu, and he was describing that in heavenly planets, for example, there are the rivers of mango juice. Then in heavenly planets, there's the rivers, it's such a huge rivers, like for example, here in this world, the Ganga, so there are flowing the mango juice that you can take bath, and you can, while taking bath, you can drink the mango juice, for example. And who is believing nowadays, when people are absorbed so much in this scientific knowledge, then no one has much faith actually in Srimad Bhagavatam. But actually we can see that for some beings, even in this material world, even in this world now on earth, there may be a river of mango juice. Like I remember once we were in Salem, and there was mango season. And we were taking so much mangoes, actually. And these mangoes, in Salem, there are very famous mangoes, which are called Salem Bangalore mangoes. They are very juicy. And I remember once one mango fell down on the floor, on the ground, and juice started to flow from these mangoes. And down, actually, when this juice was flowing down from the mango, then ants were swimming actually in this juice. So we can see that even in this world, actually for some beings, there can be mango lakes or mango rivers, because for these ants actually it was like a river, This ants were just swimming in this mango juice, like that. So therefore in Srimad Bhagavatam is described that in the heavenly planets, this mango juice just flowing and creating the big rivers, like that. So, and it is described also that in heavenly planets there are such a big mango trees that the one fruit actually of mango is the size of an elephant. So means such a huge. So means when such an actual mango will fall down on the ground, it's breaking and it's creating so much juice that it's flowing, like that. So, but then we have to have some faith actually in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, Prabhupada used to preach in this league of devotees, but people are not interested. He was so frustrated that he just, left India and he went to the West, and to preach this knowledge. And then he found actually the people who wanted to listen from him, like that. So we know that in this Jhansi, when Prabhupada started the League of Devotees, he initiated just one person. Maybe hundreds of persons were coming, or dozens of persons, but he initiated at that time in India only just one person. His name was Prabhakar. I don't remember exactly. So, and Prabhupada wanted to preach to the scientific world, that he wanted to preach to educated people, he wanted to preach to scientists, like that, to present this knowledge about the creation and about the supreme, about the purpose actually of life, like that, in a scientific way. Therefore, he was instructing his disciples, like Bhaktisvarup Damodar Maharaj, because he had scientific background actually, to create some, and he created some Bhaktivedanta Institute, like that, which exists even nowadays, like that. So therefore Prabhupada, he was meeting some businessmen, he was meeting some politicians, because he was so eager actually to spread this knowledge to everyone all over the world. So although he was changing address so fast that his mail could hardly catch up to him, he wrote a newspaper ad for a home study course. And this is educational. Study the scriptural secret of Bhagavad Gita at home by correspondence and be a strong man. Full courses fee ₹50 only. The instruction is imparted not in the ordinary imaginative way of qualified interpretations, but in the parampara, system of perceptual succession. All questions are properly solved by A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Students of all communities and nationalities are welcome. He had not published Back to Godhead in 4 years since 1952. So it means that Prabhupada started Back to Godhead like around 1956. So, but he decided to revive it. Back to Godhead was a mission worthy of his full attention, and it took all his efforts to collect the funds, compose the articles, see to the printing, and then distribute 1,000 of copies. So Prabhupada, he was the first actually book distributor in our movement. Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai Sudarshan Chakra ki jai, Shri Gaunitai ki jai. So here we can see that Prabhupada was overseeing everything alone. He was printing, he was distributing thousands of copies, he was composing articles. So he was so much actually eager to spread this knowledge to the Western countries that he started actually everything on his own. The money he would raise by obtaining interviews and soliciting donations. One donor, a friend, was Justice Bipin Chandra Mishra, a Supreme Court judge in New Delhi. Justice Mishra. He used to come to me once a month. I gave him a donation for his paper. It was only a 4-page magazine, but it showed his study of the subject and his earnestness and his devotion to Lord Krishna. He appeared to be a very simple man and modest, and it was pleasant to talk to him. He had a smiling demeanor. The main thing was his humility. He would talk with affection and confidence, and he knew we were discussing things near to God. So every talk with him would sublimate us. I was a rather important personality at that time in religious affairs, but he would not be expected to make any contribution to the main religious life of Delhi at that time because of the language difficulty, because his aim was to reach the English-educated persons, not the Hindi ones. And also because his means and his popularity were not at all established, the magazine did not have a wide appeal among these people. Other religious leaders were all well established. The only thing that impressed one and was worth noticing at that time was the simplicity of his abiding faith in God's name and his mission. Writing articles was no problem. By the grace of his spiritual master, he was neither short of ideas nor unable to set them down. Translating and commenting on the Vaishnava scriptures, his pen flowed freely. He was inspired by the miracle of the press, the Brihat Mridanga. The work of writing his message down and printing it 1,000 times. With the awareness and urgency of speaking directly to everyone, not just people in Delhi or India, but everyone. Put Abhay into an ecstatic meditation. He would contemplate how copies of Back to Godhead could reach thoughtful people who might read them gratefully. Nor was maintenance a problem. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami had declared that a devotee's problem was not food, clothing, or shelter. If one had no bed, he could always lie on the ground and use his arms for a pillow. For clothes, he could always find some rejected garments in the street. For food, he could live on fruits from the trees. And for lodging, he could stay in the mountain caves. Nature supplies all necessities. A transcendentalist should not flatter materialists to maintain himself. Yeah, Prabhupada many times was saying that according to our karma, actually everything will come. This, how much property we will have, how much happy we will become, how much distress will come, and this all things will come according to our karma. But spiritual life actually will not come so easy. Unless we will do some endeavor in our life, unless we will struggle actually to do progress in spiritual life, it won't come. So Prabhupada said, because why it will not happen? Because Krishna is not giving bhakti very easily. He has to see that someone is honest in his spiritual life, then he will award him with bhakti, with devotion and with love for him. Because Krishna can be controlled by the love of his devotee, like that. So therefore, we can see that by the love for his devotee, he is able to become even a charioteer. Like he became a charioteer to his friend Arjuna, because of Arjuna's love, because he knew that Arjuna, he will not misuse actually his love. You know what it means to become a charioteer. Means Krishna is taking a lower position, you know, out of love to his devotee, out of loving exchange. You know, to become a charioteer means that when Arjuna was fighting on battlefield of Kurukshetra, you know, sometimes he has to, you know, when he was shooting the arrows, he could not, you know, speak to Krishna. Krishna, you turn right, you turn left, like that. So he had to, you know, kick the charioteer. You know, if he wants to turn the right, he has to kick in the right side. If he wants to go the left, he has to kick in left sides. You know, so. And Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, actually, out of loving relationship, out of loving exchange, actually, he is able to accept the lower position, like that. And later, now we are actually in this shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna is leaving actually this planet, when Krishna left this planet, Arjuna is lamenting that how he could do this, you know, how he could be such familiar actually with Krishna, you know, that and do such a things, you know. He is just thinking that he will go to hell for this, like that. But this is all actually the arrangements of Krishna. This is all out of loving relationship with Krishna. Therefore, Prabhupada is writing here that actually that someone who has faith in Krishna, someone who is advanced in spiritual life, he is not bothering actually for clothes, for where he will stay, you know, for food, for lodging. Then Krishna is saying that, Prabhupada is saying that according to karma, everything will come. That actually our meditation should be how we can advance in spiritual life. So this is what we should meditate, and other things will automatically will come. As we can see on examples of many devotees, like Srivas Pandit, who he didn't have any job, but still, and even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once asked him that, Srivas Pandit, you have wife, you have children, you have house, how you will maintain it? How you will gain your food, if you are not doing any job? Then Srivas Pandit said, if I will clap 3 times and food will not come, maintenance will not come, then I will drown in the Ganges, like that. And always everything was supplied to Srivas Pandit. And he was just performing devotional service. He was just hosting devotees, serving prasadam, maintaining kirtans for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And everything, all other things actually were followed. But we have to have faith actually in the Lord. Yeah, if we don't have faith, actually it's very difficult. Then our life will be a struggle. So therefore, all food, Prabhupada actually it's writing that for the lodging he could stay in the mountains. Nature supplies all necessities. And we can see that Krishna is supplying everything, even for the animals. So what to speak about his devotee? For his devotee, actually, he takes special care. So therefore, Prabhupada, here it's written that one should not flatter materialists to maintain himself. Of course, Abai wasn't living in the mountains or jungle, but in the city of New Delhi. Yet he had virtually adopted the renounced mode Shukadev had suggested, not to punish his body or prove himself pure and uncompromising, but because he had to live in poverty if he wanted to regularly produce back to Godhead. So Prabhupada, he was living very simply, very simple, and any penny actually he had, he was just saving for the printing of back to Godhead. For Abai, it was a great labor of love, and purchasing paper for printing became a priority even before eating. Neglecting his personal needs for preaching was a manifestation of his faith in Krishna, of which Abai suffered no scarcity. He had full faith that if he served Krishna, he would be provided for. To work alone was not an insurmountable problem. It was pleasant and simple. It was better than having to manage the neophyte inmates of the Gaudiya Sangha. The ecstasy of working hard to serve his spiritual master was not a problem. The problem was the condition of the world. According to the Shastras, the current age, Kali Yuga, would create continual degradation in society. And Abai could see this evidenced every day in Delhi. Delhi, formerly known as Hastinapura, had been the ancient capital of King Yudhishthir, who 5,000 years before, under the patronage of Lord Krishna, had been the most opulent king in the world, and whose citizens had been fully protected and provided for. Now, after 1,000 years of foreign subjugation, India was again independent, and New Delhi was the capital. So we can see this description actually in Srimad Bhagavatam, then that when 5,000 years ago, when Yudhishthir Maharaj, he was the emperor of the world, that India was so opulent that there were so many cows that people were just there was so much milk, so much butter that people were just throwing on each other. There was so much opulence actually in India, and everyone was happy because Yudhishthir, Actually, he was the emperor of the world, and means he was a good and Krishna consciousness actually ruler. So 5,000 years before, under the patronage of Lord Krishna, had been the most opulent king yet so in the world, and whose citizens had been fully protected and provided for. So now, after 1,000 years of foreign subjugation, India was again independent, and New Delhi was the capital. Yet even in Abhai's relatively brief 60 years of experience, he had seen Indian culture, which in his childhood had retained much of the origin purity of the Vedic age degrade. Now he saw a society in which his countrymen were victimized by the propaganda that they could be happy in gross materialistic indulgence. So the British had introduced tea, tobacco, meat, and factories, and now even after independence, these were a part of India's new way of life. Having driven away the British, the Indians were imitating Western ways, and India's leaders were deliberately ignoring the Vedic principles of God consciousness, the very treasures India was meant to distribute to the whole world. So Abhay had seen how India had abandoned her spiritual heritage and gone running after the modernization of the West. But now, where was the material advancement? Were Indians any happier in their independence than they had been in British days? To Abhay, the overpopulated city was a hell of ruffians and fools. Although thousands of poor people were employed in the burgeoning steel mills and tire factories, their living conditions had worsened. Abhay voiced his concern about these conditions in his Back to Godhead. Could the poor eat the nuts and bolts produced in the factories? Could they be nourished by cinema, television, or sex songs on the radio? The leaders were unable to see that abandoning spiritual principles had led to the very ills they officially abhorred. This decadent, rebellious youth, corruption in every area of civic life, and even economic instability and scarcity. When Abhay had been a youth in Calcutta, there had been no cinema billboards advertising lurid sexual fantasies, but now India had developed the third largest movie industry in the world, and film advertisements were all over Delhi. Beef shops and liquor shops had sprung up. The newspapers regularly ran editorials deploring the degradation of young Indian boys who teased, insulted, and affronted women on the street. Women's leagues complained about increased juvenile promiscuity and the obscene treatment of women in films and advertisements, but there were no upright brahmanas or saintly administrators to do anything about it. So we can see that this modern culture, that India started to following so much Western countries, and this TV actually spoiled all Indian culture. I remember once I was distributing books in Bhimavaram, and then I was going house to house and distributing books, meeting people, speaking to people. And once I was standing in one doors, and just TV was in front of me. So one lady came, and she was ready to take some book, So she took a book and she went to bring money. Then I was standing, I was brahmachari at the time, I was standing and just in front of me, TV was just blurring, switched on and some music was going on and half-naked women that just were dancing on TV. And I just thought, to myself, just one day with TV and my spiritual life is completely finished, like that. So how actually degrading actually this TV is that, that people, as every day they're watching this, so they actually, they lost all sense of spiritual life. They lost all interest in spiritual life and just they are thinking that they can be happy actually by materialistic advancement. But yesterday, actually, we were reading a very nice shloka from Bhagavad Gita, from 17th chapter, which was the shloka, this is austerity of the mind. '17, yeah? 1716. Yeah, it was actually, it was very nice purport. Prabhupada has written that how actually this mind is cheating us, that we can be happy actually by sense gratification. And Prabhupada is writing actually in this commentaries that actually this is just the opposite, just the opposite. And he is writing that to make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. That it should be so trained, it should be so trained that it can be always thinking of doing good for others. So in this material civilization we can do that actually everyone is putting himself on in the center. That nowadays people, just want to gratify their own senses and become intoxicated because of this. And no one wants to do good for others because everyone is putting himself in the center. So the best training for the mind is gravity in thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. So the satisfaction of the mind can be obtained not by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense, can be obtained not only by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. So in the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways of sense gratification, and so there is no possibility of the mind becoming satisfied. So the best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata, Ramayana, and so on. So we can see that before this TV actually came in India, so what people were doing on the villages, they were meeting together in the evening, they were doing some Ramayana dramas, Mahabharata dramas, and so on, and discussing Krishna Katha. But when this actually industry came, when this TV came, so all this culture was spoiled. People were just starting to following completely the Western countries. We can see that nowadays Guru Maharaj said that he is not seeing the difference between Western people and Indian people. Now maybe there is one difference, that these Indian people, they are more eager even for sense gratification like that, especially when they're coming to Western countries. Like that, they become more degraded. Like they start to drink, start to smoke, and so on. So many times I am seeing some Indian girls smoking cigarette, or nowadays they have this electronic, I don't know if they are using in India, but in the West is nowadays very popular, this electronic cigarette, like that. So it's nowadays even Indian girls, Indian boys are using this. So therefore, here it's written by Satsvarup Das Goswami that the living conditions, that although thousands of poor people were employed in the burgeoning, how to pronounce this properly, burgeoning steel mills and tire factories, their living condition has worsened. Abai voiced his concern about these conditions in his Back to Godhead. Could the poor, this I already have written. So therefore, there were not upright brahmanas or saintly administrators to do anything about it. Therefore, Prabhupada, by establishing this Krishna consciousness, he saw that nowadays in the world, actually there is no proper brahmanas. So by establishing this Krishna consciousness movement, actually Prabhupada wanted to create a brahmanas, genuine brahmanas, actually who can teach people the proper principles and the goal of life. And especially nowadays we can see when people in the West, they become Krishna conscious. This is what Prabhupada wanted, that if he was saying that if people in America become Krishna conscious, automatically all people in the world actually will follow. That's and especially in India, if the people in India, they are seeing actually that the Western people, they are taking up this Krishna consciousness, they become also very much actually inspired, because nowadays in India there is so much conversions going on, so many people are turning into Christianity or different religions, because no one is preaching nowadays this Sanatana Dharma. We can see if you will go to some, very old temples in India, like in Srirangam or other places, or some, the temples where the deities already are from hundreds and hundreds of years. So people are coming on, they will take darshan, they will take pradakshina, circumambulate the deities, and they will just go to house. There is no one preaching nowadays is going on. So therefore, this preaching is very, very important. Actually, this Prabhupada said that this knowledge, that these books, what he has written, this is the law books for next 10,000 years. Therefore, Prabhupada actually he did so much input actually for the welfare of human society, actually by giving this knowledge. So Abai saw the need for respiritualization of society. But society was rushing headlong in the opposite direction. In February, even as Abai was trying to publish his Back to Godhead, Prime Minister Nehru, while speaking with concern of India's crisis of the spirit, simultaneously launched another 5-year plan for rapid industrialization. So we know that Nehru was so much into industrialization of India, and he was so much against actually this Vedic culture. He was actually very sinful. He was a womanizer, he was a drunkard, and he was a smoker, and he had so much affairs with some even Western ladies and so on. So he was leading actually like animalistic life, and he wanted to just spoil India. He wanted to spoil the Indian culture. And we know what happened with him in the future. Like Prabhupada said once on the class that in Sweden there was one person who had 2 dogs. And one of the dogs, he was the previous Prime Minister of India. Most probably Mr. Nehru. So therefore, while speaking with concern of India's crisis of the spirit, simultaneously Lord launched another 5-year plan for rapid industrialization. Everyone from the Prime Minister down to the common man was concerned about the symptomatic problems, but no one seemed to understand that the real problem was the lack of God consciousness, the lack of Krishna consciousness. So Abhay had to deliver the medicine for the ills of Kali Yuga. He knew it was needed on a much larger scale than he could reach on his own. But even to administer one issue of Back to Godhead was almost beyond his means. Writing the articles, typing them, taking them to the printer, and distributing them should not have been the work of one lone impoverished devotee, but in working with his godbrothers, he had met with their decided lack of organization and the lack of desire for vigorous preaching. So Bhakti Saranga Goswami had seemed determined to keep Sajjan Toshani small, and his mat, like so many others, had been ineffectual in attracting new members. So this was the petty-minded that would cripple preaching. Therefore, he was now working alone on a small scale, happy in his spiritual welfare work, yet aware that his 4-page newspaper was only a drop of water in the desert. So we know that when Prabhupada, I think, was living in Mumbai, or in Allahabad, I don't remember exactly. So he was already at that time active as a preacher. He was known that he is very erudite in scriptures, and at that time already the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and godbrothers of Prabhupada was called him actually Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, because he was so much well known in scriptures like that, and he had so much devotion, and he was so much helping actually in developing the mats and so on, and in contributing for the development of mats, and giving his own time actually for spreading this Krishna consciousness and helping his spiritual master. So then his godbrothers, by seeing him, his eagerness actually in preaching Krishna consciousness, they asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that why he will not become one of the managers or one of the temple presidents in one of our mats and so on. But then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually he discouraged, and he said that in the future, actually Prabhupada he will do everything by himself. He will do everything alone. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually he had a vision that actually this is the Prabhupada who will spread actually this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur already knew actually that this is the person actually who will do the needful. He will go to the West and actually spread this Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada actually had so much compassion actually for all living beings, for all living entities, for all human beings actually. And as we know that later when Srila Prabhupada went to the West, and there were some recollections or some interviews with Prabhupada's godbrothers, that Prabhupada's godbrothers, they recollected that because in Chaitanya Charitamrita it's written actually that this Krishna consciousness will be spread all over the world. And there is even this shloka that in every nook and corner of the world, the holy name of the Lord will be sung. But then, actually, at that time, no one had faith actually in this. That everyone was thinking that this is some flowery language of the Vedas, like that. But why Prabhupada was successful in spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world? Because Srila Prabhupada have great faith in the holy name of the Lord. And Prabhupada, he was not taking this as a flowery language of the Vedas. Only Prabhupada knew that if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted this, it will happen. It will happen. It must happen, because this is the desire of the Lord. So therefore Prabhupada, he took actually this instruction of his spiritual master full-heartedly, and then he spread, actually, he went to the West and he spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And we can see that when Prabhupada, he came to New York in 1965, actually it was the right time actually when Prabhupada arrived, because at that time it was so much, the society were feeling so much displeasure with the government, with this Vietnam War and so on. So therefore this hippie movement, this children of flowers and so on, they were just searching. People were just searching for some alternative to materialistic life. They were just searching after some spirituality. But at that time there were some Indian bogus gurus who were coming to US, and they were just misleading people. So when Prabhupada came and gave this knowledge, actually, that later we can see when Prabhupada came to America, there will be a chapter, the planting the seeds, like that. So therefore the Prabhupada planted actually the seed of devotional service on the Western land, actually, that we can see that all young people, European and American people, actually they took up the Krishna consciousness because of Prabhupada. So maybe I will finish here, like that. And I don't know if someone has some comments or some questions. Because next continuation will be next Ekadashi, yes? Yeah. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.